Hey guys, welcome back. I know it's been a while. I've done some things on the car. A lot of it has been repetition, but I think we can talk about some of the things that I ran into that I had to fix and change, and what I did going to the other side and some of the issues that I found. So let's go take a look. So we did the hinge for the door, and unfortunately it was not working out well because the doors, when they were open together, they both were at slightly a different angle. And a lot of that has to do with kind of the screw up that I did with that hinge, which is here. So you can see that at first I cut it too short, so then I had to weld on other stuff. Then I was playing with placement of where the gas shock goes. And then the other problem is that this distance from here to the bend was different than it was on the other door. So I didn't measure carefully enough. So then I had to get my buddy Dale to send me another one of these tubes so that I could make another one. And then I just settled down, took my time, and basically measured out everything exactly. I put the car up, got it leveled, so that I knew that when I measured my angles, and I don't have a fancy digital angle finder, but I do have one that is analog, and it worked just fine. But then we had to make sure that the measurement from the hinge to that bend was the exact same that it is on the passenger side. The mounting point was exactly the same, and then the positioning of the mounting place for the gas shock was also in the right place. So once I got all that done, boy, I tell you, now it matches perfectly. So we opened both doors. I'll give you a view of that here in a second. Now, one of the other things I want to point out is in previous videos with the other hinges, you saw that we were rubbing here on these corners. And that was because I didn't have the angles just right. And so it would bind here on the corner when opening it. And then the other problem was that the window, let's go over to the other side and I'll show you that. The window here, when I had the old style, when I opened the door, it would bind up against this window very severely. And so that was a big problem. So with the new angle, this comes out and it clears. So now you can see how it actually clears that window nicely. Also opening this gap up too so that we don't have any problems. And that chip actually happened when I had the older hinges on. So yeah, so that's was a lot of work, but now that it's done, everything is working great. And then you can see one of the big things I had to do was I had to redo this area here for the striker because it was not reaching out far enough, and plus it was very, very floppy, so sometimes it would bend. So I put 2 layers of steel here, and now it's very, very strong. It doesn't move at all, which is great. I had to relocate the door a little bit, so we had to do that. We've also got these gaps I have to deal with, so we'll be taking the door off and then we'll be fixing those gaps. We had to do the latch down here, again, to make sure that these go together properly, like that. And then we still have this gap here that we're going to have to close up somehow, so that we'll be working on. The gap down there obviously is not so bad, so that can be adjusted, but from here on up through here we're going to have to fix that. Also, now we're proud here of this, of the fender. So we've got to deal with that as well. I've got the windows all set, so they go in relatively simple. They go into this rubber channel here. Let's see, get you down here, and then we'll make some brackets so that it'll fit in there nicely. And then I did the window back here. Again, we're mechanically attaching it, so I'll probably do the same on the front quarter window. But we've got that all in. We've got the weather stripping in. So it's got to get cleaned up. There's no doubt about that, corners and stuff like that. So we'll do that at some point, get that all straightened out. And maybe I'll make some covers for it, or brackets or whatnot. That's what 3D printing really gives you, is the ability to, you know, make spacers like this. And make vents like this that fit much better to the contours of the car. As you can see here, I've been working on these gaps, trying to get them as close as possible. So when we go to bodywork the car, we're not just, you know, stuffing everything with filler, which is a bad idea. So we've got our dash up and running. I had to redo the wiring for the windows, and so basically now these guys work just fine. One press can lift the window up, and then another press puts it down. So now all of this is controlled through, I guess you can't see it down there with all the wiring in the way, but we'll get that straightened out. But there's that power management box that we have instead of a normal panel. That's where I do most of that. One of the things that we're going to have to do is when you open the doors, they sit underneath this lip here for a seal, and what happens is when you open the doors, they pull pretty hard on this lip. So in the real one that I had for a couple of weeks, I noticed that when you pulled the latch down here to open the door, the window would actually lower just a little bit to clearance that. So when you open the door, that was all clearanced out. So we're going to go ahead and get that working so that we can run it through that power distribution module, or I'll come up with another circuit that I can use that will allow these to just come down whenever either the outside latch, which is under here, is pushed, or when that latch is pulled. So one of the issues that I still have to address is the fact that the doors come down pretty hard. The reason for that is that my doors are heavier than the real one, and so making sure those are as light as possible is important, but I have a lot of steel in there because I want to make it safe. And then the door skin itself, with all the epoxy in there, is a little bit heavier than I would hope, because it's got epoxy that's gone into the plastic, which gives it lots of strength. However, it makes it heavier than a normal door skin. So I may have to put another gas shock to help support the one that's in there, which is an OEM Lamborghini one. And I think I mentioned this before, those gas shocks actually are different than the ones you would get at, say, McMaster Car, because when they open up, there's actually a damper in there to keep the doors from just flying open and slamming into a stop or their full open capability, and then the doors would just bounce around. So that's a really nice thing. So make sure that when you're doing this, that you do have that type of mechanism in your gas shock. It will make it look a lot better when you're opening the doors and stuff. It won't make it as clunky. But when it comes down, we overcome the physics of the door, because it's basically a big lever arm on that gas shock. So we may need to support it a little bit more. So I've got some other gas shocks coming that are of the normal type that you would get from McMaster to potentially support that door so that we get a nice soft close rather than it coming down a little hard in the last couple of inches. So we'll be working on that. I'm going to get the car out and hopefully drive it next weekend. I did some clearancing for inside of the wheel arches up front. I noticed that I was rubbing on some of the brake lines and the clutch lines, so I moved those. I did some cutting and readjusting of the frame so that the tires don't interfere with the frame. And the reason that's happening is because the tires I have are a little higher profile than the tires I started with. So the fact that I changed the height of I just didn't like how low profile the tires were before. But at any rate, that had to be clearanced out so it could handle those higher profile tires. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Sorry there's not a lot of action here and stuff like that, but just repeating what I did in the last video on the other side of the car is not that interesting, but the problems that I run into are, and I think they're important for our community to be aware of those things so that you can avoid some of the problems that I've run into and others have run into. Another big thanks to Dale for providing the bent tubing, because I don't have a tubing bender, so I'll put a link to his build. Dale is a real craftsman, as well as my buddy Dario down south of us here. He doesn't have a YouTube page, but Dale will post his from time to time on his page, and you can see some of the stuff that Dario's doing. Again, another craftsman doing an Aventador. So it's been really great to be working with those guys. So do seek out these folks who are meticulous and are real craftspersons, because that'll help you with your build in the future. If you haven't subscribed, please do, and we'll see you next time.